Hello, Twin Peaks students. Welcome to a lesson on multiply and divide fractions. Now, it's very different from adding and subtracting fractions because you actually don't need a common denominator. So these two are not the same. That is fine, all right? Now, before you start multiplying, you just need to multiply straight across. So like 3 times 5 and 10 times 12. But before you do that, you want to cross reduce first because not only will it make the number smaller, but it will be easier to reduce, all right, at the end, okay? Because you always want a reduced answer, all right? So for example, cross reduce, look at the cross number like 3 and 12. What number can go into 3 and what number can go into 12? 3, okay? So 3 divided into 3 1 times, 3 can go into 12 4 times. Good, so you have to use the same number, okay? So 3 going to 3, 3 going to 12, 1 and 4. And then for 10 and 5, I can use the number 5. 5 can go into 5 1 time, 5 can go into 10 2 times, all right? So that's my new number, and I'm just gonna multiply straight across, okay? Before I do that though, I always wanna use a triangle to determine if my answer is a positive or negative. Remember, you're in 7th grade now. 7th grade, you have to know if the answer is positive or negative, okay? So let's take a look. If my first number was a negative and my second number was a positive, my answer is a negative, okay? I'm just gonna multiply now. 1 times 1, 2 times 4, and that's my final answer, okay? Let's go on and do number 2, all right? Number 2, we can do the exact same thing. I'm gonna try to cross reduce. Looks like a 6 can go into 6 1 time, 6 can go into 8 3 times, 3 and 7, you can't reduce that. I know you could divide by 1 to both of them, but it doesn't change anything, okay? Now I'm gonna go ahead and use my triangle. A negative and a negative gives me a positive when you multiply. So I know my answer is a positive. I'm just gonna ignore it now. I know it's a positive. 1 times 3 is 3. 7 times 3 is 21. Now when you get here, that doesn't have to be, or that probably not your final answer. You gotta look at it carefully first, and then you realize, like, oh, wait a minute, I can still reduce that. So again, you always wanna see you can reduce it again, okay? And then it looks like if I just divide the top by 3, again, you have to divide by the same number, okay? This, I can divide this by 3 and this one by 3, and that would give me 1 over 7. So this is my actual final answer, okay? All right, let's go and do number 3. You can never multiply with a mixed number, so I'm gonna change that quickly. So that gives me 1 times 4 is 3, so 7 over 4 times negative 5 over 6. Now I'm gonna cross reduce again. Looks like I can't reduce there and I can't reduce there, so I'm just gonna go ahead and multiply straight across. I know my answer is a negative because a positive times a negative is a negative, so my answer is going to be a negative 35 over 24. Now you don't have to make it into a mixed number. You could just leave it as an improper number as long as it's reduced, okay? Number 4, this one here has 2 things for me to do. I got to make this into an improper number, and I got to make this one into a regular fraction number also, okay? So 3 times 3 plus 1, that gives me a negative 10 over 3. Times, now I could use a parenthesis, sure. And then anytime when you want to make a whole number into a fraction, you guys just have to make it into over 1. Okay, so negative 12 over 1. All right, cross reduce. I could use 3 again to divide those two. So 3 going to go 3 1 time, 3 goes around 12 4 times. All right. Negative times a negative is a positive. So my final answer should be 40. Again, 10 times 4 and 1 times 1. You could leave it as 40 over 1. You could also just write it as 40 is fine too. Remember, use a triangle. Always use a triangle to see what your answer is going to be. And again, negative times a negative is positive. All right. Now, as you can see, multiplying fractions is actually fairly easy. So when you see a divide fraction, that's actually very tricky to do because you can't just do 6 divided by 4 or 7 divided by 15. So what you can do though is change this division into a multiplication. To do that, we're going to do a trick called keep, change, flip. All right. So what does this mean? This means that you can keep the first fraction. You can change the division to multiplication as long as you flip the second fraction, okay? Or the reciprocal, that's what they call it. All right, so let me show you how to do that real fast. So I'm gonna keep exactly the first one as is, change the division to multiplication, and now to change the multiplication, you gotta flip the second fraction. That gives me 15 over 4. All right, cross reduce, I can't divide by 2, I give you 3, divide by 2 gives me 2. And this one I can't reduce, so I'm done there, okay? Now always use a triangle, don't forget. So negative times a positive is a negative. 3 times 15 is 45. 7 times 2 is 14. Again, you don't have to make it into a mixed number. You gotta leave it as improper. I'm okay with that, all right? Number 6. Let's do it again, okay? So I'm gonna keep the first one, change the multiplication, and then you're gonna flip the second fraction. That gives me negative. Now, I know the negative one's here. It doesn't matter where it goes, so just say negative 11 over 1, okay? It doesn't matter where it's negative is. Just know as the first number is negative and the second number is a negative, okay? So I'm gonna take a look at that. So using a triangle, I know my answer is positive. I'm just gonna multiply 10 times 11 gives me 110. 7 times 1 is 7. Again, you could leave it like that. As you can see, you can't reduce anymore. You guys always have to see you can still reduce, and you can't, all right? All right, number 7. You can make it into a mixed number. Again, this one, I'm just gonna change it right away before I even look at doing keep, change, flip, okay? So that gives me 1 times 3 is 3, plus 2 is 5 over 3. Divide by, let's use a parenthesis. That one gives me negative 10 over 3. All right, now I'm gonna do keep, change, flip. Again, don't try to skip step here, okay? Let's just rewrite everything. Just looks a little cleaner that way. Now I'm gonna do keep, change, flip. So I'm gonna keep the first fraction as is, change it to multiplication, and flip the second fraction, negative 3 over 10. Again, a negative doesn't matter where it goes, okay? Just know as the second number is negative. That means that when you multiply a positive times a negative, my answer is gonna be a negative, okay? So let's go and do that now. I can cross reduce these two there. Divide by 5 gives me 1. Divide by 5 gives me 2. Divide by 3 gives me 1. Divide by 3 gives me 1. So now I see a bunch of small answer. Okay, so 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. All right, last problem. This one I just put a 1 right here. I don't have to rewrite it. It's kind of skipping step, but I'm okay with that because it still looks pretty clean, okay? Keep the first fraction as negative 5 over 6. And I'm gonna change this to multiplication. And then to do that, you gotta make sure you flip the second fraction, all right? There you go. I know my answer is gonna be negative because a negative times a positive is a negative. I'm gonna cross reduce real fast. Divide by 5 gives me 1, divide by 5 gives me 4. Now that's my new number. 1 times 1 is 1, 6 times 4 is 24. All right, that is it. You have any questions? Make sure you ask me. Thank you.